Step into the dramatic world of Queen Jezebel, the powerful Phoenician princess who shook Israel with ambition, manipulation, and defiance. From fiery confrontations with the prophet Elijah to the murder of Naboth and the rise of Baal worship, her story is one of power, pride, and divine justice. Witness the rise and fall of a queen whose legacy echoes through the ages in the Bible chronicles. In the coastal strongholds of Phoenicia, where purple dye stained royal garments and merchants ruled the sea, a princess was raised not merely to marry, but to conquer. Her name was Jezebel, daughter of a priest-king. She grew beneath towering temple pillars dedicated to Baal and Asherah. Incense smoke and ritual chants shaped her childhood. Power was not questioned in her father's court. It was seized, protected, and expanded. When word arrived that King Ahab of Israel sought alliance through marriage, Jezebel understood the assignment. She did not weep at leaving her homeland. She did not fear foreign customs. She saw opportunity. Israel would not change her, she would change Israel. Her arrival in Samaria was nothing short of theatrical. Draped in royal robes dyed in Tyrian purple, eyes lined with kohl, posture regal and unbending, she stepped into the palace as though it already belonged to her. Ahab admired her confidence, mistaking it for strength that would secure his throne. He did not see the quiet storm forming behind her composed smile. Jezebel did not come alone. She brought priests, prophets, craftsmen, and gold. She brought her gods. Within months, whispers spread through the streets. Altars rising, sacred poles carved, foreign chants echoing through royal courts. The covenant traditions of Israel trembled beneath her influence. The princess of Sidon had not come to adapt. She had come to rule, not only beside the king, but above the conscience of a nation. Queen Jezebel wasted no time reshaping the spiritual landscape of Israel. With calculated persuasion and relentless confidence, she convinced King Ahab to construct a grand temple for Baal in the capital city of Samaria. Its towering pillars and elaborate carvings stood as a bold declaration. Israel would bow to new gods. 450 prophets of Baal dined at her table. 400 prophets of Asherah found royal protection under her authority. They were clothed, fed, and empowered, while the prophets of the Lord were hunted like criminals. Jezebel understood that to control a kingdom, one must control its worship. Faith shaped loyalty, and loyalty secured power. Orders spread quietly at first, then violently. The prophets of the Lord were to be executed. Homes were raided. Scrolls were burned. Sacred gatherings were disrupted. Fear gripped the faithful. Yet in the shadows, a man named Obadiah risked everything. Loyal to God but serving in Ahab's court, he hid 100 prophets in caves, supplying them with bread and water while Jezebel's soldiers searched relentlessly. The queen's influence grew stronger by the day. Ahab, though king in title, increasingly deferred to her counsel. Jezebel did not rule through impulsive rage but through strategic dominance. She believed she was civilizing Israel, elevating it beyond what she considered outdated covenant traditions. But heaven was not silent. In the wilderness, a solitary prophet named Elijah prepared to challenge a queen who believed herself untouchable. From the rugged hills of Gilead emerged a man clothed not in royal linen but in rough garments of hair. His name was Elijah, and he carried no sword, only a word. Without hesitation, he stood before King Ahab and delivered a decree that would shake the throne. There would be neither dew nor rain in Israel except at his word. It was a direct assault on Baal, whom Jezebel proclaimed as the god of storms and fertility. If Baal ruled the skies, let him send rain. If he held power over the harvest, let him rescue the land from famine. But the heavens sealed shut, fields withered, rivers shrank, livestock collapsed in the dust. What began as whispers of inconvenience became cries of desperation. For 3.5 years, drought devoured the nation. Hunger hollowed faces. Markets emptied. Wells ran dry. Yet Jezebel refused to repent. Instead, she intensified her search for Elijah, determined to silence the voice that dared challenge her authority. Messengers were sent across neighboring territories. Alliances strained in pursuit of one prophet. Meanwhile, Elijah survived not by royal provision but by divine sustenance, fed by ravens and later sheltered in foreign lands. The contrast was unmistakable. A queen surrounded by wealth yet powerless to command the sky, and a prophet alone yet backed by heaven. The drought was more than judgment, it was a confrontation. And soon, it would move from silent skies to a mountain where fire would answer the question of who truly ruled Israel. After 3.5 years of drought, the tension in Israel reached its breaking point. King Ahab, desperate for rain and fearful of Jezebel's wrath, summoned Elijah to Mount Carmel. The king, though uneasy, allowed the confrontation, perhaps hoping to see his kingdom saved without further disruption. Jezebel, ever confident in Baal's supremacy, expected her prophets to triumph effortlessly. Elijah stepped forward before the gathered nation. He proposed a contest: 2 altars, 2 offerings, 1 true God. The prophets of Baal would call on their God. Elijah would call on the Lord. The challenge was simple yet profound. Whichever deity answered with fire would prove their dominion. For hours, the prophets of Baal cried, danced, and slashed themselves, yet no flame fell from the heavens. The people grew restless, murmuring doubts, questioning the power they had once believed supreme. Then Elijah approached his altar. He rebuilt it meticulously, piling stones and drenching the wood and sacrifice with water 3 times over, making the impossible task even more dramatic. Kneeling, he prayed not with force but with unwavering faith, invoking the Lord to reveal his glory. Suddenly, fire descended. Not a spark, not a flicker, but a consuming blaze that devoured the offering, the wood, the stones, and even the water in the trench around it. The crowd fell to their knees in awe and terror, recognizing the power of the true God. Jezebel's face, hidden behind her royal veil, burned with fury. The demonstration shattered her prophet's credibility, yet it did nothing to bend her pride. She vowed vengeance, whispering threats that would echo through the hills. Elijah would not survive her wrath. The stage was set. Divine fire had spoken, but the queen's defiance would soon plunge Israel into deeper corruption and bloodshed. The triumph on Mount Carmel sent shockwaves through Israel, yet it did little to sway the heart of Queen Jezebel. In her palace chambers, she raged like a storm unbound, pacing before golden pillars, her voice echoing through the halls. How dare a lone prophet humiliate her God and mock her authority? Every stone of Baal's temple felt like a challenge, every faithful citizen a potential traitor. Her pride, once a tool of subtle influence, now became a weapon of vengeance. She sent a messenger to Elijah with a chilling proclamation. May the gods strike him down, but I swear he will not live to celebrate another sunrise. Her words were calculated, meant to instill fear not only in the prophet but in every Israelite who had witnessed the miracle. She did not understand that fear alone could not command the divine. Meanwhile, Elijah, aware of the queen's fury, fled into the wilderness. He wandered for days, disheartened and weary, praying for strength and understanding. Yet even in solitude, his faith never wavered. In a quiet moment atop Mount Horeb, he encountered a whisper, a subtle, almost imperceptible sound that reminded him the Lord's power did not depend on spectacle alone. Fire and wind were instruments, but patience and obedience were the truest weapons. Back in Samaria, Jezebel's influence tightened like a vice. Laws bent under her will, nobles whispered her name with caution, and prophets of the Lord hid in caves, their lives bound to Obadiah's courage. Her determination to eradicate dissent would soon manifest in a sinister plan, one that would reach into the heart of Israelite lands and stain the hands of a king. Jezebel's wrath was no longer private. It was a storm gathering over the nation, promising bloodshed and corruption that would test the faith of every man and woman in Israel. Amid the turmoil of drought and divine confrontation, Queen Jezebel's ambition remained unquenched. Her eyes fell upon a small vineyard, owned by a humble man named Naboth. Nestled near the palace, its grapevines were lush and fragrant, a perfect addition to the queen's private gardens. She approached King Ahab with a seemingly modest request to acquire the vineyard for a vegetable garden. Ahab, wearied by Jezebel's power and longing to please her, offered to buy it. But Naboth refused. "The Lord forbid I sell the inheritance of my ancestors," he replied, his voice steady with conviction. He would not betray the covenant tradition for fear or favor. Ahab's face darkened, torn between love for his queen and the law he was sworn to uphold. Jezebel, however, did not see refusal as an obstacle, only an inconvenience. That night, Jezebel orchestrated a cunning and brutal plot. She wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed them with the royal signet, and sent them to the elders and nobles of Naboth's city. Her missives instructed them to proclaim a fast, seat Naboth in a prominent place, and accuse him of blasphemy and treason. The people, deceived by the royal command, condemned Naboth without hesitation. Stones rained down on him, and the vineyard became the queen's property, now soaked in innocent blood. When Ahab returned to claim the land, Jezebel's smile was cold triumph. Yet the act did not go unnoticed by heaven. In the quiet of the wilderness, Elijah received a message from God. The crime of Naboth would bring judgment not only on Ahab but on Jezebel herself. Her power was immense, but divine justice, unseen and patient, was gathering like a storm on the horizon. The murder of Naboth and the seizure of his vineyard cast a shadow over the royal palace. King Ahab, once complacent in his queen's schemes, now trembled under the weight of guilt. His nights were restless, haunted by the cries of the innocent and the voice of the Lord that came through the prophet Elijah. Elijah approached Ahab boldly, declaring the judgment that would fall upon him. His dynasty would suffer, blood would be shed, and the injustice of Naboth's death would not be forgotten. Queen Jezebel, however, remained unrepentant. She moved through the halls of Samaria with regal authority, her presence a storm that silenced whispers and commanded obedience. "Let him prophesy if he dares," she said, her eyes gleaming with defiance. To her, power was absolute, and divine threats were merely words unless backed by immediate action. Yet the warning of Elijah was not empty. The skies, still gray with drought, seemed to hold their breath as if watching the fate of those who defied divine justice. Ahab's life would end in battle, and his blood would be licked by dogs, a grim fulfillment of prophecy. Jezebel's influence, though vast, would also face a violent reckoning for her ruthless ambition and the lives she had destroyed. The prophet's words spread through the city like fire. The Lord's hand was moving. Fear, once dormant, began to prick even the hearts of those loyal to Jezebel. Her throne was strong, her power intimidating, yet a greater authority, patient, relentless, and unseen, was aligning the threads of retribution. The stage for divine judgment had been set, and Israel would soon witness the consequences of unchecked pride and cruelty. War drums echoed across the northern borders of Israel as King Ahab led his army into battle. The sky was tense, clouds heavy, reflecting the weight of divine judgment that hung over him. Despite his army's strength and Jezebel's counsel, Ahab could not outrun the prophecy delivered by Elijah. The Lord's hand was upon him, and every step toward the battlefield was a step toward fulfillment. In the chaos of combat, Ahab was struck by an enemy's arrow. He fell upon his chariot, grievously wounded, and was carried back to the city. His reign, long tainted by compromise and submission to Jezebel's will, was nearing its violent end. The king's death was more than a personal tragedy. It was a public demonstration of divine justice. As prophesied, his blood was licked by dogs, leaving a chilling imprint of accountability for all who witnessed it. Back in Samaria, Jezebel's reaction was swift and unrelenting. Anger, sharpened by grief and the loss of control, transformed her mourning into a thirst for vengeance. She would not bow, nor would she fade quietly. Her son's succession offered her continued influence, and she wielded it with the cunning and ruthlessness that had defined her reign. The palace remained a center of manipulation, the altars of Baal still burning, and the prophets of the Lord still hiding in fear. But the seeds of her own downfall had already been sown. The same ambition that had allowed her to dominate Ahab's court now blinded her to the gathering storm. Every act of cruelty, every display of pride, tightened the noose that divine justice would one day pull. Her story, intertwined with her husband's demise, was far from over. But the warning from Elijah echoed louder than ever. The mighty can fall, and even queens are not beyond the reach of fate. With King Ahab gone, Queen Jezebel's power seemed unshakable. She ruled through her sons, asserting influence over the kingdom's decisions, the courts, and the altars of Baal. Her presence was magnetic, terrifying, and absolute. Samaria bowed to her will, yet beneath the surface, fear began to stir among those who remembered the prophet's words. Elijah, undeterred by Jezebel's dominance, remained a silent specter over her reign. His warnings, though unheeded in the moment, were a reminder that divine authority surpasses royal decree. Jezebel, however, interpreted silence as weakness. She did not retreat or reflect. She plotted. The prophet's bold challenge at Mount Carmel had not broken her spirit. It had strengthened her resolve to assert dominance over Israel by any means necessary. Her cruelty continued unabated. Anyone opposing her, noble or commoner, faced exile, imprisonment, or death. The vineyards, fields, and courts became extensions of her ambition, and whispers of rebellion were crushed before they could form. Yet in the shadows, the memory of Naboth's injustice and the chilling prophecy of Elijah lingered, growing louder with each passing day. Even as she basked in her perceived invincibility, the seeds of vengeance took root. The kingdom, though outwardly flourishing under her control, was fragile. Her reliance on fear and manipulation made her powerful, but also dangerously exposed. The people's resentment, combined with divine patience, was quietly constructing a reckoning that no amount of wealth, ritual, or intimidation could prevent. Jezebel's reign had reached its zenith, but the hour of her judgment was approaching. A storm she could neither bribe, threaten, nor escape. Jezebel's arrogance had reached its peak when she walked the palace corridors with her head held high, convinced her power was untouchable. Yet the forces she had long ignored were converging. The people whispered her crimes, the prophets of the Lord grew bolder in hiding, and the prophecy of Elijah remained unforgotten. Every act of cruelty, from Naboth's murder to the persecution of God's prophets, had been recorded, not in ink, but in the eyes of the heavens. The day of reckoning arrived with a sudden and violent ferocity. Soldiers loyal to the Lord approached Samaria, and Jezebel, ever defiant, confronted them from her palace window. Clad in royal robes and jeweled authority, she mocked their arrival, expecting negotiation, fear, or retreat. But the soldiers advanced without hesitation. In a terrifying and swift moment, Jezebel was seized and thrown from her high window. Her fall was more than a physical descent. It was the collapse of arrogance, tyranny, and pride that had ruled Israel for decades. The prophecy had been fulfilled with terrifying precision. Dogs devoured her body as Elijah had foretold, leaving behind only the echoes of a reign built on manipulation, violence, and rebellion. Her death served as a stark reminder that no authority, however cunning or powerful, could escape divine justice. Her temples, her altars, and her court would eventually crumble, and the people would remember both the fear she instilled and the lesson her demise carried. Even in death, Jezebel's story lingered as a warning. Power without accountability, ambition without conscience, and defiance against divine authority carried consequences. The land mourned no queen, yet learned the cost of yielding to a spirit that rules through fear, pride, and destruction. Though Queen Jezebel met a violent end, her influence did not vanish entirely. Stories of her ambition, manipulation, and cruelty traveled across generations, embedding themselves into cultural memory. Her name became synonymous with a force that defies moral authority, dominates through deception, and coerces others into submission. This Jezebel spirit came to describe more than a single queen. It became a symbol of unchecked control and rebellion against righteous order. In modern times, the lessons of Jezebel resonate with those who witness corruption, abuse, and manipulation in leadership, organizations, or even personal relationships. The same qualities that allowed her to bend a kingdom to her will, charm, cunning, and intimidation, appear wherever power is misused. And yet, just as in ancient Israel, there are modern-day Elijahs. Individuals who speak truth boldly, confront injustice, and refuse to be silenced. Courage, integrity, and unwavering faith continue to challenge tyranny and deception, proving that no spirit of control can ultimately prevail against honesty and righteousness. The story also serves as a moral compass. Ambition unchecked by conscience can devastate not only those in its immediate path, but the wider community. The legacy of Jezebel is thus dual: a cautionary tale of pride and tyranny, and a beacon for those willing to confront corruption. While she ruled with fear and manipulation, her downfall reminds the world that authority is never absolute and justice, though patient, is inevitable. Her name lives on, a warning and a lesson. The powerful may rise, but truth endures, and the righteous voice, no matter how alone, has the power to challenge even the most formidable reign. The story of Queen Jezebel concludes not merely as history, but as a mirror for today. Her ambition, manipulation, and defiance against righteous authority echo in modern arenas, corporate boardrooms, political offices, and even personal relationships. Wherever power seeks to dominate through deceit, intimidation, or coercion, the spirit of Jezebel can appear, subtle yet destructive, shaping decisions and bending wills to selfish ends. Yet the story does not end with despair. Just as Elijah stood boldly against Jezebel's tyranny, modern-day Elijahs are called to speak truth, act courageously, and confront injustice wherever it rises. Faith, integrity, and persistence remain the tools that challenge oppression. The tale urges vigilance, reminding us that silence and fear only embolden manipulation, while courage and moral clarity can topple even the most entrenched power. From the altars of Baal to modern systems of control, the lesson is timeless. Unchecked ambition and cruelty invite judgment, and those who misuse authority ultimately face consequences. Jezebel's life and violent fall illustrate the cost of defying justice, but they also inspire resistance against corruption. Every voice that refuses to bow, every act that defends truth, becomes part of a legacy that transcends centuries. In the end, the story of Jezebel is more than the fall of a queen. It is a call to action. It challenges each generation to recognize tyranny, confront deceit, and uphold integrity. The fire that consumed her altars may have died, but the lesson it left behind continues to burn bright. Courage and truth endure, even when the world bows to power. The history of Jezebel teaches that while manipulation and rebellion can rise, the righteous will always find a way to confront and prevail. Thank you for watching Bible Chronicles. Kindly subscribe to our channel for more videos.